Okay, folks, if you haven't heard, there's been a little bit of a feud that has sprung up between Eric July and Ethan Van Sciver. These are two leading lights in the independent comics industry. Ethan Van Sciver has been on the scene a long time and is one of the organizers, leaders of a movement within independent comics called Comicsgate, which basically believes in free personal and political expression for comics creators without fear of retaliation by the industry. Just basically saying people ought to be able to express their political views and not have to squelch them for the sake of maintaining some sort of image for the company. Rather, they deserve the same free speech rights as everyone else. And Eric July has recently hit the scene with his multi-million-dollar campaign winning Rippaverse, which is publishing so far one title, ISOM, which has had its second issue and has raked in, the two issues collectively have raked in about $6 million. And he's coming out with Alpha Core very soon, written by comic book legend Chuck Dixon and drawn by very popular artist Joe Bennett, who was previously of Immortal Hulk. And these two have come into conflict over some positions that Ethan Van Sciver publicly took regarding Eric July's views on criticism and also views on a lawsuit that Eric July is facing from a ministry who claims trademark infringement. So these are positions that Ethan Van Sciver has publicly taken that are, in Eric July's view, against his own, and therefore it's made what could have been a private conflict or a private disagreement into a public disagreement that is working towards Eric July's disadvantage. And apparently there was a conversation that took place privately between them some months ago, both via text and via phone, in which Eric July said some things that Ethan Van Sciver took to be threatening, saying that he would retaliate, or Eric July basically implying that he would retaliate in some way if Ethan Van Sciver didn't silence himself on these particular matters involving Eric July. And when that happened, Ethan just kind of took it in stride, but it's rankled him to the point of he actually got on a live stream yesterday with Eric July, or in the chat of the live stream with Eric July, in which he accused Eric July of having threatened him, and Eric July denied this. And so Ethan actually went so far as to publish a private text that Eric had sent him in which he felt there was a threat implied. And although there was talk of reciprocation in there, I looked at that email and was trying to figure out exactly what it was that Eric July was saying. And it helped a great deal to hear Ethan Van Sciver's own point of view on his live stream later that night and realize that they have these two views that are in conflict, and I think because their basic value structures are in conflict and their ways of dealing with people are in conflict, that there's been sort of a miscommunication between the two. And I think that miscommunication between the two is the source of this friction that has arisen between them, and that if the miscommunication could be explained, then maybe the friction would subside. And so that's why I'm making this video now, is because I think, even though I'm no mind reader, and who knows, everything I say from this point forward could be completely wrong, and you're going to have to, go back and do probably your own research to find out if everything that I've said up to this point is correct. But I would say I think I understand where the parties are coming from, and I would like to make sure that they're on the same page with each other, and amicably so. And so I want to kind of go through what I think are the mental processes going on here, and maybe that'll help as far as to bring peace to this particular feud, which I don't think is bubbling over into the vast spectrum of independent comics altogether, but better to at least try to nip things in the bud if you can. And so one of the things that I do know about Eric July is that he's an anarcho-capitalist, and I have spent a lot of time listening to another anarcho-capitalist, Stefan Molyneux, and so I'm kind of familiar with the philosophical mindset and the moral mindsets that come along with anarcho-capitalism, and one of the things that I've heard Stefan Molyneux say in the past is, when you first meet people, act by the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But then, once you understand how they intend to treat you, you treat them by the same standard. Do unto the other as the other does unto you. Because in an anarcho-capitalist mindset, as opposed, which is almost by necessity a non-religious mindset, I don't know if Eric July is trying to square the circle there by trying to make anarcho-capitalism and Christianity compatible, because from a philosophical perspective, they absolutely are not. Whereas Ethan Van Sciver comes from originally a Mormon background, and so his idea is probably more along the lines of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, no matter what. And those are two different mindsets, because from a religious framework, there is a moral system by which everybody is expected to abide. In an anarcho-capitalist framework, the moral system of interpersonal relationships is something that is negotiated between parties. In other words, starting from the start, I will treat you the way I would want to be treated. But as your behavior reveals to me what your standards are, I will negotiate with you and abide with you by the same standard that you abide with me, so that we exist on an equal playing field, no matter what. Whereas from a religious standpoint, if I was basically going to say, okay, I am going to treat you from this particular higher moral framework the whole time, no matter what you do to me, that allows you to take advantage of me. And that's actually something in the Bible it's kind of the turn the other cheek motif. You know, if someone strikes you on the cheek, then turn him the other and give him the opportunity to take advantage of you further. And the idea, I think, being is that when the person understands that you are being generous, as opposed to reacting in the way that person is used to seeing other people react to being taken advantage of, then that person's attitude will change. Something like that. Anarcho-capitalism would say, no, if you're behaving kindly towards someone and that person strikes you on the cheek, that authorizes you to strike the other person on the cheek, you know, because that person has revealed to you the standard by which they're willing to act. And so, under anarcho-capitalism, it's do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, until you understand their behavior, in which case, do unto others as they do unto you. So, within that framework, you got to understand where this conflict is coming from. From what Eric has said in his live stream, and in the private text of his that Ethan had posted on the all caps Twitter account, which was that was a dick move, and it was a self-harming move by Ethan Van Sciver. I can't emphasize that enough. If somebody communicates with you in private, then you do not reveal that communication in public. That's just, you don't do that, because then who is going to trust you with a private conversation from that point forward? I mean, you've just demonstrated your willingness to air out somebody's laundry in public. Then who's going to trust you going from that part forward? So I think Ethan Van Sciver really hurt himself on that. Now, this is not something he does on the regular, but you do it even one time, you damage your reputation. So if anything, I think Ethan Van Sciver should apologize for that and say, you know, that's not something I'm going to do in the future. But the reason he did it is because he got on Eric July's live stream in the morning and said, hey, you threatened me at this particular time. Eric July said, I never threatened you. Ethan said, I have the receipts, I'll publish the receipts, and he did. At least what he believed were the receipts of said threat. So anyway, the point being, although he shouldn't have done that, he did it. And according to what I read in that personal text from Eric July, Eric's own personal standard, which is the way he expects to be treated himself and how he treats others, his default standard of moral treatment, the golden rule standard, is that if Eric has an ally who is in conflict with someone, Eric will not have that ally's enemy, so to speak, on his platform to platform that enemy's position. So let's say that Ethan Van Sciver and Rini Strachowski had a falling out of some kind. Now, Ethan and Rini have both done work for Eric, and so he would consider both of them to be allies. So the next time that Eric has Ethan on his platform, he will have Ethan talk about his own stuff, and he will have Ethan talk about the stuff that that Ethan has done for Eric and might do for Eric in the future. And likewise, if Rini were on Eric's show, then he would have her talk about her own stuff and the stuff that, you know, she's done for Eric and might do for him in the future. But he will not platform them for the sake of taking a position against one or the other, or taking a position for one or the other. In other words, their squabble is their squabble. He's not going to get involved in that. He's not going to take a public position with that, even if he has a very strong opinion. Because out of loyalty to one or the other, or both, he does not want to do anything that's going to insert himself into the middle of that particular debate. Now, Ethan, on the other hand, operates by a different standard. And Eric sees this as being a lower standard than his own, and that's important. Ethan is a free speech champion. He's been a long-time gladiator also in the bloody arena of public disputes. He sees nothing wrong with, instead of taking this position of, I'm not going to insert myself into this, and I'm not going to allow people to express their views on this on my show, because this is going to end up in me taking sides against one or the other. Ethan's view is platform everybody. Let everybody talk. And this comes from his background of having worked in an environment where speech was squelched. You could not be a vocal conservative in the comics industry, and apparently you still cannot be a vocal conservative in the comics industry if you want to get ahead or keep your job. And so he had to keep his head down and his mouth shut and just basically not express his views. And so now, having been freed from that oppressive state, he feels like, okay, if people have disagreements, well, I'm going to have my own opinion on that, and I should be as free to express my opinion on that as anybody else. This is pretty much Ethan's brand. I mean, it's the Comicsgate brand. Comic book creators ought to be able to publicly disagree about things, even if that puts you in conflict with your friends. Because the idea is, if you all get out to talk about it, and you all get out to discuss it, and you can get everything out in the air, and you can look at one another's ideas and opinions, then maybe you can arrive at the truth, and the truth will set everyone free. Now, this is opposed to Eric July's value system, in which it appears, at least, that loyalty to one's allies ought to have a restraining effect on one's speech and one's willingness to take a public stance. So, what Eric July said to Ethan Van Sciver in his text was basically, look, here is my value. My value is, if you have a beef with someone, I'm not going to platform that person to express that person's own position against you, because that would be my taking that person's side. I'm instead going to be loyal to you, and moreover, I'm not even going to comment on what is going on between you and that person, because I don't need to insert myself into the middle of that. I'm just going to take your side, or I'm going to at least support you by not platforming this particular individual for that purpose. I mean, it's not to say that he might not platform the person to talk about his or her own work, or, you know, any business agreements between the two of them, but as far as talking about, you know, you, if you're my ally, I'm not going to have that person on to spout negative stuff about you. That's just my loyalty to you. And moreover, if I have a position, moreover, let me make sure I'm saying this in the right way. If my ally has a certain position on something and is going in a course that I disagree with, well, still, out of loyalty to that ally, I will not publicly speak out against that ally's position, even if I disagree with it. Now, that is, in a way, putting loyalty over honesty and putting restraint upon one's own speech for the sake of maintaining the relationship. In Ethan's view, that flips things entirely on their head, because not only are you having to squelch your own speech in order to be loyal to that person, but are you really being loyal to that person if you're not being honest about your position on that person's stance? You know, if you're going in a direction that I think you ought not to be going in, how is it helping you if I keep silent on it? And how is it helping anybody else in the industry who is looking at you and maybe trying to take a cue from you? If I think that they're going to be following you over a cliff, I'm not helping them by remaining silent. You know, I could wind up contributing passively to the harm of other people who think you're an example to follow when I don't think you're an example to follow. So, in Ethan's view, his duty is to the truth. In Eric July's view, his duty is to his friends. That is how I see their two value systems coming into conflict. Now, what Eric July essentially said to Ethan Van Sciver is, okay, I recognize that you and I are not playing by the same values. Here are my values. I value this concept of loyalty over this concept of honesty. You do the opposite. You value the honesty over the loyalty. Fair enough. I will now abide by your value system. I myself will put honesty over loyalty where you are concerned, because that is what you have shown you prefer from me. And this all goes back to that anarcho-capitalist framework of saying, okay, my morality, as far as I was concerned, is up here. You dealt with me on this level. I will come down and deal with you on the same level that you're dealing with me. And that's just a renegotiation of the moral terms of the relationship. That's something that's not going to register properly in the minds of somebody who has the religious framework, because not only is morality not something to be negotiated, you know, that's a foreign concept from the religious framework, but moreover, from Ethan's point of view, he's the one who's got the higher moral framework, putting honesty over loyalty the way that he does. So Eric July is, in a sense, saying, okay, if you're not going to play with me on this lower standard, I will play with you on the higher standard. And that's kind of like does not compute. And so when that happens, when you have that kind of does not compute situation, number one, that morality is something that can be renegotiated, and number two, you're raising yourself to my level, it's like, I don't understand where he's coming from, and it's just because he's not seeing things from the same point of view that Eric July is seeing things. So when he sees that, and when he also combines it with the word reciprocation, which Eric July just means we're going to be playing with this according to the same set of rules, Ethan Van Sciver is looking at that and probably interpreting that in his mind as retaliation instead, and hence the threat implied. Although there is a threat implied, I think Eric July is wrong to say that there's no threat implied. There's no active threat, certainly. I mean, Eric July has not said, I'm going to talk shit about you in the media, I'm going to go on people's programs and I'm going to badmouth you, I'm going to go and do this and thus and so against you. Eric July has said nothing of the kind like that. He's not actively threatening anything, but he is opening up the potential that if someone wants to come on his show and talk shit about EVS, about Ethan Van Sciver, then, well, you know, if Ethan Van Sciver is willing to let someone come on his show and talk shit about Eric July, then Eric July is going to be just as open to letting someone come onto his show and talk shit about Ethan Van Sciver. He's just basically saying, you're playing by that set of rules. From now on, I will play by the same set of rules and let the chips fall where they may. Now, the irony of all this is that let's let everyone air their views and let the chips fall where they may is exactly Ethan Van Sciver's position. So Eric July is actually saying, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I'm agreeing with you. Now, that does open the potential for negative consequences for Ethan Van Sciver, especially, given that we've all seen Eric when he's at his restrained. We've all seen Eric when he's at his unleashed. Nobody likes to be on the receiving end of Eric July unleashed. But, it's possible now because, Ethan's basically set the terms and said, I prefer honesty over any sense of loyalty. And again, there can be some confusion between their points of view on what constitutes honesty and loyalty and who do I really have my responsibility with. And by the way, Ethan Van Sciver is a public figure who has expressed his opinion on comics many, many times, and who is expected by his audience to express his opinion on comics many, many times. And so his audience has demands on him as well that conflict with what Eric July is or was expecting from him. So, okay, that is basically what I think the basis of the miscommunication is. Eric is basically saying to Ethan, okay, I will play by your rules from now on. And that sounds menacing, but it's not meant to be. It just means I didn't realize that in your view, creators should vent their honest opinions, even if doing so might impede their allies and help their enemies. Okay? My view was that, if you just hold back on information like that. Your view is you speak up on information like that. Okay, so now I'll speak up. And that opens up the potential for there to be, negative stuff flowing from Eric July toward Ethan Van Sciver, but he's not intending anything of the kind. And so if there's any kind of threat implied in there, it's a threat of potential. It's not a threat of, premeditation. He's not planning on attacking. So anyway, I think I could probably say that in about 5 or 6 different ways, but I hope that's kind of not muddied the waters any further. I mean, the one underlying question is it really disloyal to a person to be publicly honest about one's view that an ally is in the wrong? It's debatable. If you really think someone is wrong, should you have that person's back no matter what? I mean, it would be nice to think that, this person is going to trust me right or wrong, but I think it's also more important that if this person actually thinks I'm wrong, that person is going to be willing to communicate that to me so that I don't hurt myself by allowing me to run forward in the course that I've chosen, even though that's ultimately going to be the worst course for me. A friend doesn't just have your back by letting you go your own way. Sometimes a friend has your back by keeping you from running out in front of a bus. So, there's also room to say, well, there's the private disagreement versus the public disagreement, and that's true too. But again, people have different responsibilities. Ethan's got a responsibility to his audience to comment on certain things and certain important developments in the industry, and Eric July, he might feel otherwise on that. So, anyway, the basic thing that has happened here is that Eric July has basically said, okay, so long as we're all playing by the same rules, I'm okay. And Ethan, for his part, should recognize that Eric July is now just playing by the same rules that he is, and that's okay, because I think that's really the way that Ethan Van Sciver would want it. Everybody says what is on their mind, and everybody, is able to get to the truth through that open and free discussion, and then, from there, let the chips fall where they may. Now, considering that Eric July has 3 times as many followers as Ethan Van Sciver, and so has the ability to wield a bigger club than Ethan Van Sciver at this point, let the chips fall where they may, can seem pretty ominous. But at the same time, so long as Eric July hasn't come right out and said, and he never has, that, hey, look at this club, I'm about to swing it at you, then there shouldn't be any grounds to think that the threat is anything more than, what the potential is. Okay, so I've said enough on that. If you look at the latest live stream on Ethan Van Sciver's page, I have actually posted this as a comment, and I've probably done it a lot more articulately there. I kind of made this video thinking that maybe what I wrote there was not particularly articulate, and maybe my speaking it would make it make more sense. I don't know if I've accomplished that having listened to my own voice, but hopefully between what I wrote, which I think I'm also going to put on my community page, and what I've said in this video, you can gather what it is that I'm trying to say about the two parties, and basically just show that I think they're on the same page now. I think Ethan Van Sciver's a little nervous about being on the same page, just because, you know, Eric July is who he is and has the tendency to be vehemently against anyone whom he perceives to be against him. But at the same time, I don't think Ethan has ever come right out and said, you know, I'm against you. I think it's more along the lines of, look, I'm disagreeing with you because I honestly think you're wrong and I'm trying to help you. Hopefully, Eric July can take that in the spirit for which it's intended, just as I hope that Ethan Van Sciver can take this idea of reciprocity in the spirit which Eric July intended. So, anyway, the hope is that there will be peace and harmony and love all around. So, in any case, thank you for watching. I'm Mike Partika. I hope this cleared things up rather than clouded them even worse. And I will talk to y'all later.